Welcome to today's interview. I've brought on Lucas Catton. Lucas, welcome.
Thank you so much, Heather. I appreciate it.
Give the listeners a little background. Where do you live and what do you do?
So I'm just north of Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a consultant primarily in the behavioral health field, but I also work with individuals and other businesses to help them find fulfillment in what it is that they're looking for.
And I think that's such a powerful topic because, and I remember back in my days working in corporate, a lot of the conversations were people seeking passion and purpose and, what am I here for? What am I meant to be doing? So how do you help people kind of hone in on what does fulfillment even mean?
I think one of the biggest things is what in their life brings them joy. So joy can be any tiny little moment as well. Like I have this series of pictures on my phone, for example. I like to grill out, and I see these tiny little green and blue flies that land on the railing as I'm grilling, and they let me get really close and take pictures. And I have this series of pictures, and they're beautiful. And being able to stop and look at and appreciate nature for that one moment brings me joy. So I use that as like a smallest analogy, all the way to helping people overcome intense grief or overcoming addictions or all kind of things. But what is it that is joyful? And let's start there and see where that goes.
And does that mean, because I think a lot of people, the saying goes, do something you love, you don't work a day in your life. Well, I'm doing what I love and it is work.
It's work, but it can be enjoyable.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with my wife, who's been in a corporate environment for 13 years now, and loves her job and does amazingly well at it. But we have this conversation all the time where we might have identical schedules and be slammed, and I go, yeah, but I'm just getting started. I feel like I really enjoy working through people's problems and helping them find solutions. And whatever their goal is, that joy at the end is my joy as well. That I feel like some sense of accomplishment because I'm helping them accomplish something.
Okay. And something I want to talk about, which you touched on, well, before we started recording, was I think a lot of people think they need these big gargantuan, I want to reach and help 1 billion people. That's amazing and good for you to have that goal. But what about starting more locally, your community, helping a neighbor? Like that is still significant, where I think a lot of people think, well, if I'm not helping 1 billion people, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. Your mindset as you talk about is so important, because too often we fall into, especially like the social media problem of comparison. And so when we're following maybe our idols in whatever fields that we do or that kind of thing, we see these major accomplishments that they do, and somehow comparing ourselves, like I'm not doing the billion people thing, or I'm not making X amount of dollars, or I'm not feeding so many homeless people, whatever the goal is, that discounts all the good that is being done. And I'm a fan of progress and taking the next step, even if it's the wrong one. It's taking a step and moving in a direction with an intention and a purpose behind it. And the outcome is more often than not positive. And if not, then you learn something so that the next one can be positive.
I was just writing this down. If we could touch on this whole, it's something that I've become more aware of the last few months, and it's about being intentional. And so
Mhm.
I think a lot of people get caught up in being busy and doing things, which makes them feel good, or crossing up the list. But
Right.
can we talk about what does that even mean to be intentional?
I think it comes back to first being aware and increasing awareness, so that any action that we're doing, anything that we're saying, anything that we're planning, that kind of thing, has a purpose, has an intention behind it, whether it's potentially a specific outcome or just a reason for doing it, that we're not going through the motion simply in a robotic fashion. But by doing things intentionally, we become more present as a result, and more aware of the before, during, and after, and not just randomly, having to cope with things.
Also, especially because you come from the behavior, did you say, well, you have a background in psychology and behavior and stuff. And so something we touched about, because I asked you, and I personally know some people that deal with, and sometimes it's all consuming anxiety And
Mhm.
sometimes I've felt anxiousness, but I also have learned to, I guess I'm just more emotionally aware that when I have thoughts or I have feelings, to feel it. I don't suppress it. I feel it for the moment and then I let it go. So people
Mhm.
that get caught up in anxiety, how can they kind of catch themselves so they don't spiral out of control?
Sure. Well, and not to belittle anyone that's experiencing very intense anxiety, and I know that there are people and people close to me that have experienced very acute, severe levels of anxiety, and then there's everyday anxieties that we all experience, and then there's some heightened levels in between, that we can also all experience at different times. And I think the first thing is certainly becoming more aware and more present. Like a lot of this comes back to awareness. And as we talked about, and you talked about a previous guest too, about having the notion of focusing on our breath and some intentional breathing and paying attention to the feeling of breathing in and the feeling of breathing out and becoming more present in that particular moment and knowing that at that time, whatever thoughts are coming and going don't actually matter because they can come and go and they will come and go. There's another one right behind it, and that if we know that we're not in immediate danger at that moment, then usually the peak of anxiety will pass. And when you get into the amygdala and the fight or flights mode and everything that comes along with heightened anxiety and fear of something happening in the future that is not happening in the present, then we can allow that thought of the fear of some future circumstance which may or may not ever happen to pass
Yeah.
and come back to the present.
You said that so well. I hadn't quite heard it explained like that before, but I know even when I've experienced the feelings or the thoughts of anxiousness, it is because I'm
Mhm.
future tripping. I'm worrying about hypotheticals, how something might go. I might miss a flight. I might. So it is just letting go of all of that. My mom has taught me, especially when it comes to meditation, when you have thoughts, think of them as clouds and let them pass by. So is that what you're saying? And the point of the breath work is to get out of the worry, the future tripping, and come back to right now. Are you okay right now? Are things okay right now?
Yes, in this exact moment, even though your heart may be pounding, or you're trying to catch your breath, or you might have all these other physical symptoms that are going on, but in this particular moment, are things actually okay? And um, you know, the answer is obviously usually yes, and that those other things are a byproduct of feeling anxious. And it's okay to feel anxious. Like we're not ever going to totally rid ourselves. The most calm people in the world, I guarantee, feel anxiety at some point. Dalai Lama, I'm sure, is anxious. Before whatever he's maybe hopping on a plane or about to talk to thousands of people or whoever it is. But yet, the recognition of that, the awareness of it, and allowing it to pass is something that we can always practice. For the rest of our lives.
Yes, well said. Okay, something I really want to dive into that I know you're passionate about and you live by is this acronym you pick. Can you please explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So UPIC stands for progress and impermanence and connection and kindness. And we touched on the progress part earlier on, about not necessarily having to have these gigantic, lofty goals, although it's good to have those goals as well, but to recognize the incremental progress along the way. So taking small steps over time in a defined direction, even if you have to course correct, even if it's the wrong step, as we mentioned before, you can learn something from it and take another new step the next time. Even if we get knocked down, because we will get knocked down, or we will get pushed backwards, or we will have some hurdles, we get up, we take that next step again, and we're making some sort of progress. And when that becomes measurable over time, we can look back and see how far we have come in any particular area. And it becomes like compounding interest in a bank account. The more you have, all of a sudden over time, that whatever percentage starts to be much larger leaps, and you can get a lot further, whether that's influence, whether that's finances, whether that's progress in work or learning something, or your other intellectual endeavors. There's so many different ways that can be viewed and see and be proud of the things that we've been done, that it doesn't have to be I use this baseball analogy for anyone who might know anything about baseball. It's called a Mendoza line. And That's sort of like the minimum acceptable batting average in professional baseball, and it's only a 200 batting average. Well, 2 out of 10 hits isn't great, but only one more base hit is a 300 batting average, which is incredible. So the difference between that, 20 hits out of 100 or 30 hits out of 100 or 2 out of 10, et cetera, is not that much, but it only takes a little bit of progress to be able to get there. Not hitting a home run, not hitting doubles every time, but just simple base hits along the time, and you'll have a better average.
I think that's what's downplayed a lot is so many people, and I think I used to get caught up in this too. I needed quantum leaps forward to feel like I was progressing. And now I understand that one step forward each day is way more valuable than 10 steps ahead that you might ultimately fall 4 back.
Absolutely. There's some, I beat myself up sometimes because I do have high expectations for things, let's say my own businesses. And sometimes I forget that different accomplishments that I've had because it's also a testament to the accomplishment itself isn't the thing, because you hear people who have done amazing things and they go, yeah, they celebrated that for about 6 days or sometimes 15 minutes or whatever that amount is. Like, okay, now what? That in itself doesn't necessarily bring that feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction. It is that progress along the way that is exciting. That's what's the next goal, not as in I'm dissatisfied until I achieve something, so I always must have a goal, but as long as I'm working towards something in a direction, that working is what is enjoyable, that experience of living, the doing so with our teammates or our other loved ones, that is the process that makes living much more exciting, and not I've got X number of dollars in my bank account, or I've accomplished some finite goal.
Something else I want to touch on regarding progress. I love the saying progress, not perfection. And what you said, and I actually had to write it down, is the whole point of course correcting. Go ahead and at least take the steps forward and you figure it out along the way, but at least take the next step.
Yeah, exactly. Marie Forleo, her book, which I actually haven't read it yet, but Everything is Figure Outable, I think is what it's called. And
I'll tell you real quick, because I read the book and I followed her for years. You don't even need to read the book. The title is the book.
There you go.
So that literally, she just gives tons of examples how she has throughout the years. But yes, her saying is so on point that everything is figure outable, and be resourceful. That's what I've really learned to do, is be resourceful.
Yeah. Yeah. We had, I had a business that got flooded, like the upstairs suite above us, a pipe burst, and it literally washed out our entire business. And we were shut down for 4 months as a result of that. Thankfully, there was some insurance that helped cover, some of the lost income. But in many small businesses, especially startups, that would have absolutely killed it. People would have taken the insurance money and said, "Forget it, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm not even going to go through that process again." But we didn't. My partners and I, we looked at it. We said, "Okay, this is an issue. Yes, there's nothing we can do about it now. We can't, like, freaking out is not going to solve this problem. It's already done. What do we need to do to take the steps to reopen? How can we work with the contractors? How can we work with the insurance companies? How can we make sure that our clients are being serviced and taken care of if we can't at that time?" And you figure it out, and we did. And you're so right that you become resourceful, and if you believe, from a mindset perspective, if you believe that there is a way, then you can find a way, whatever that is.
Yeah, focus on opportunities, not the problems.
There you go.
Okay, so back to your acronym you pick. Can we dive
That's
into
right.
impermanence?
Impermanence. That comes back to awareness, and when we talked about anxiety a little bit, and becoming more present as a whole. So impermanence is simply the notion that this too shall pass. Nothing ever stays the same. And even in the most difficult times that we experience, knowing that that is not a permanent situation, a permanent condition, even if maybe it's a health condition and that is permanent, the feeling at that moment doesn't have to be. There's some wonderful examples and stories and speakers out there of people who have had the most heinous tragedies occur and all these things, and how they have been able to overcome it. And each one had to come to the point of recognizing that if I stay stuck in this lower level mindset as a result of this thing that has occurred, then I will never get out of it. No matter what, I won't ever feel better. I won't ever progress in life in some way. So understanding impermanence, that this too shall pass, allows us to look forward in a positive way of the next moment, and knowing that the next moment may not be this difficult time, and probably won't be, especially if we go back to the P in progress and we take a step in a direction.
I love what you said about the impermanence, and this just connected so well, especially an experience I had today. I think a lot of people experience a bad moment and they call it a bad day or a bad week. And I
Mhm.
want people to become aware of what they're saying, their language, because did you really have a bad day or was it a bad moment? And to understand the difference.
That's perfect. And you know, that reminded me as well of when we look at our identities. When people look at that, then people think that they're stuck in a particular label often,
Mm.
whether it's a diagnosis, whether it's a job that they've had, whether it's a situation that has occurred, that they believe that that is now them, and they've adopted that as their identity. But the notion of impermanence says that you can be another person tomorrow. And even if you get into you know, split second shifts, you talked about having an aha moment, or a time of like epiphany, that somebody can literally be a new person the next moment. And so we don't have to carry around these other labels and misgivings from the past, because they're not permanent if we don't allow them to be.
Yes. So important. I hope people are writing that down. Okay, C stands for connection. So what do you mean by that?
You know, I think we all, none of us can exist by ourselves. And so I think we all absolutely have to seek connection. And that's where we find a sense of identity and being within ourselves as well, is how are we connecting with people and with life around us, whether or not there's a spiritual component for people, God, or spirituality as a whole, some of the religion, or even agnostic or even atheist, if they connect with the Mother Earth, the universe, whatever it is, that people are seeking connection, especially with other people, and that connection is where we feel most human. You know, where we can make meaningful connections with other people, whether it's as simple as having a conversation over Zoom in a podcast, or you know, being with loved ones at home. There's so many different things. Going to the grocery store, I'll use this as an example. So on a very simple level, I'm conscious of not being on my phone at the checkout line, because I see people do that. And I've been a cashier, as probably many people have, and you see people who are basically ignoring you as they look on their phone or as they're doing something else, and they're not really acknowledging your existence at that point. You're not even there, you're just doing a service for them. And so the simple act of looking them in the eye, thanking them for what they're doing, or asking them how their day is going, or even just smiling, those things develop a sense of connection in so many different ways all throughout the day with the people that we come in contact with that are complete strangers that we may not ever see again, but that builds up over time as well. So from something as simple as that all the way to our deepest connections with our you know, most intimate relationships, those are all important.
Do you know, I even love talk about simplicity, the power of a high five or a hug.
Yes.
Talk about,
Yeah.
I mean, just like, and I get told that a lot. Oh, you give such good hugs. But do you ever get the like, the worst handshake is the limp fish, right? But what's
Yeah.
even worse is like the fake hug. And so
Right.
I'm all about like the tight embrace, and I just a high five. Who doesn't want a high five?
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I guess
You
people
know,
that don't like touching people, but anyway.
right now there may not be a lot of high fives or hugs, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
And the K in your acronym you pick is for kindness. So what do you mean by that?
Kindness. You know, there's a lot of fear in our world, especially right now, of other people, of uncertainty, of situations, of lots of different things. And one of the best things that we can do is to be kind to ourselves, kind to other people, and to learn things as forgiveness that can be so imperative to rebuilding relationships, to forgiving ourselves for things that we've done in the past. And this kindness extends beyond beyond having to sort of very overtly do something big or grandiose for someone. It can be as simple as opening the door for another person. It can be as simple as, maybe somebody drops something in line and you pick it up for them. Again, something where you may not ever see that person again, but that one thing plays a part in their life that day because they then feel that kindness. It's a form of universal love that is sort of emitted into the field, if you will, and that we sort of in an inverted, selfishly way feel better as a result of being kind to other people. And when we're kind to that person is more apt to be kind to someone else, and we can actually spread in a positive way kindness and love by simply doing what we would want other people to do for us or for our loved ones. Sometimes we have a problem expecting nice things for ourselves, but we really want our children or our nieces and nephews or our parents or grandparents or brothers or sisters to be treated well. And if we can think, how would we want them to be treated in that situation and treat other people similarly, then we'd get a lot further in the world to solving many of the social difficulties that we have and international wars and all kind of things. That people are people. I even wrote a little book called "We Are All People." It's a children's book, and that's really the only point of it, is that we are all people and we are all the same, and none of us chose to be born where we were born, and we all deserve love.
Well, and on that note, the whole kindness is it's a ripple effect. And so to do one small thing, one act of kindness, like you said, opening the door, or I've heard of people, going through the drive-through at Starbucks or wherever and paying, just being kind to pay for the person behind them. And it doesn't have to be monetary, but you're right. Like sprinkle, oh, I love the saying, sprinkle kindness like confetti everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Letting someone in traffic who, if you've been sitting in that parking lot before and you know how difficult it is, pause for a brief second and let that person in. You will make their day.
Yeah.
There's so many different things like that we do every day. And it's not even intentional necessarily that we're not doing it. But if we get back to the intention that we talked about, doing things intentionally early on, becoming more aware of maybe what somebody else could be experiencing. And this brings up another point too. There's a lot of people that can have bad days or be grumpy or going through difficult times. Maybe they're experiencing anxiety. Maybe they're experiencing sadness or depression. Maybe they've got an injury or illness. If we give people the benefit of the doubt, knowing that that by and large, most people are good and well-meaning people, they may have something else going on in their life, and you don't have to take it personally if they're not being kind to you at that moment, and you can be kind to them. You can watch their facial expression change in an instant, and you don't even have to call them out on it. It doesn't have to be a confrontation. It can just be being kind, knowing that they're not doing this to you, and to not take it personally in most cases.
100%. That's actually if you've ever read the book, The Four Agreements, I think that's the first one.
Yeah.
Never take anything personally. So,
Yeah.
agreed. Okay, then question for you. What is one key takeaway you want listeners to get from this conversation?
I think, I don't know, I'd go back to four, honestly, but no, the biggest thing is awareness. And I think the more awareness that we can develop for ourselves, for other people, the world around us, the more we see that things aren't as scary as some people might want to make them be so, the more confidence we can have in ourselves, and the more confidence we can have in our abilities, and the more of the other things that can happen, building connection, making progress, all these different things. So awareness would probably be the one key thing.
Got it. Okay, then I have a few rapid fire questions for you. The first one being, what is a quote or motto that you live by?
I love, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's when you know better, you do better. Um, that it's my Angelou quote, and Oprah uses this a lot, and that may not be the exact words, but I think that's the biggest thing, that we go through life doing the best we can with the information that we have and the circumstances that we're under. And if we learn something new and we have new information, maybe we can make a better decision next time. But don't beat yourself up, and don't beat other people up necessarily. If they knew better, they can do better next time.
On that note, I even like to give myself a break sometimes. It's like you did the best you could at the time with what you had. So learn
Exactly.
from it. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Because there are plenty of things that I am not proud of, that we've done in the past. But had I known differently at that time, I know that I would have done differently. But without all those experiences, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So it's not regret.
Exactly. Okay. What is a book you're currently reading or highly recommend?
So I'm an odd person in that I read multiple books at once, and it might take me months to get through them, but I'll pick up them and get through in various stages for different things. And sometimes I happen to find a piece that's very applicable at that moment. So I have one book that I've been reading for months, honestly, and it's called The Blue Ocean Strategy. And in business, I think it's brilliant because it's rather than going where everybody else is going in the red ocean where all the sharks are, you're finding open blue waters, and you're looking for things that are a new niche or something in your industry or some other product that is different from everything else out there, and not simply going with the flow of everyone else. And so I think that from a business perspective, that the blue ocean strategy is something that I would definitely highly recommend.
I feel like for some reason I have that, or I've definitely seen that one. So, okay,
It's
I'll add it to the
yeah,
list.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. With all my other company endeavors, that's like a guiding factor. Is somebody else already doing this?
All right, final question for you. What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh boy, there's a whole list of them. I think the very first thing is to stick with things longer. I had a history of giving up on things too quickly when I was much younger, and I think having that mindset of sticking with something, and when you really know that something may or may not work, then you really know, not, hey, this is difficult, I'm going to give up on it. So sticking with things a little bit longer before you bail.
Yes. Awesome. What a great note to end on. Lucas, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story.
I really appreciate it.